Hello and welcome to Arts Week on WOMR. I'm your host, Candy Hammond, and I am thrilled to welcome two wonderful local authors today. Lindsey J. Palmer is about to release her fifth book, a fantastic novel, Salt Sisters, and Christopher Mirabile. Did I get that right, Christopher? He's a first-time author of the exciting debut album novel, The Wash Ashore. Both authors call Cape Cod, and more specifically, the Lower and Outer Cape, home. So, welcome to the both of you. I am so excited to have you here. And I wondered if to start off, because my biggest fear always with writers is giving away too much. And so I wondered if each of you could maybe give listeners an idea of what your books are about and maybe read a short excerpt. And if you wouldn't mind doing that. Lindsay, do you want to go
Sure. And
first?
thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
Yeah. So my new novel is called Salt Sisters. It's about twin sisters, Jocelyn and Maddie. They grew up on the Cape in Eastham and they've never gotten along. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And after college, Maddie moved away to New York. She built a big, ambitious career while Jocelyn stayed home in her hometown. And now they're in the early 30s. And in the opening chapter, Maddie comes home for her baby shower. She's pregnant with a daughter. Meanwhile, Jocelyn is struggling at the shower. It's revealed, a few pages in that she had a baby daughter who died nearly a decade
Mm.
ago. And at the end of the event, Maddie announces that she's moving home. She's going to start her family on the Cape, which Jocelyn is clearly not happy about. And so the novel takes place over the course of the next year, alternating chapters between their two perspectives as they're forced back together under
Mm.
these less than ideal circumstances. Um, so I will read the prologue, which is
Okay.
just about a half a page, if that works.
Okay. Sounds great.
Okay. Jocelyn didn't kidnap her sister's baby, although later people would say that she had. It was her own foot pressing the gas, her own two hands on the steering wheel, no matter that it didn't feel that way. There was the lighthouse, wide swaths of red and white flashing through the fog, growing larger and larger until it was right in front of her. The car swerved around the turn and followed the lip of the land by the sea. The road was abandoned at this time of night. The sliver of moon looked lonely through the mist. In the rearview mirror, Jocelyn saw that Rose was asleep in the car seat, strapped in and secure. She counted the girl's breaths, shallow and even. She studied her pink cheeks, her button nose, her rosebud mouth. She was a beautiful baby, and she looked so peaceful now that she was safe here with Jocelyn. A peak of beach came into view over the dune. The whoosh of waves sounded gentle, harmless even, but the ocean was a dark void, swallowed by the night. Jocelyn shuddered at the sight of it. Again, voice raw, she started up the song about the blackbird and broken wings and learning to fly. How long had she been singing to soothe her niece? An hour, maybe two? It was hard to say. No one knew where they were. Everyone was probably out and searching, panicking, their imaginations running wild about what Jocelyn was capable of. She pictured her sister's face twisted up in anguish as she called out her daughter's name in vain. Well, good. This was all Maddie's fault. She'd driven her to this. Jocelyn felt a twinge in her belly, then glanced to the back seat for reassurance. There was the baby. Okay, here, with her. Fine.
Oof. Yeah, when I was reading this, oh my God, that opening really got me. It's,
Thank you.
yeah,
I
no,
guess, thank you.
yeah, no, it's, very powerful. And, ooh. Well, your book, Christopher, is quite different. But it also takes place on the Cape. It takes place in Provincetown. And, so what would you like to tell listeners about your book?
Indeed. First of all, I want to compliment Lindsay on that really moving reading. That was super
Thank
interesting.
you.
I
Yeah.
can't wait till the book drops. Mine's a series, and it's really an homage to the classic, police procedural mystery genre, which is my favorite and sort of what's I grew up with and soaked into my bones. And it's really also a love letter to Provincetown in the sense that the main character is experiencing Provincetown through the eyes of someone who can just barely comprehend it. He's a 15th generation uh, Spanish colonial ranch hand from the Southwest named Silas Lopez. It's the Silas Lopez Mysteries, and book one is called The Wash Ashore, and book two is called The Holdfast. And Silas is an interesting, complicated hero with some real strengths and some limitations, and he's meant to give you a rollicking good time and a great mystery with some humor and some heart and a relationship through line, but also just be a little bit, maybe just a tiny bit inspirational, just through by virtue of his uncommon decency. He's just someone who, regardless of what it costs him, tries to do the right thing in every situation. And he ended up getting into law enforcement out west because of a scrape. He doesn't always know his own strength, and he sort of had to make a change. And it's sort of a comical story how he ended up through a series of misunderstandings. He ended up the interim chief of police in Provincetown. And the books are really about his attempts to mentor the department he inherited and do the right thing and win the heart of the lovely Wren Bradford.
So we get some romance too.
We do. We have, well, we do. Although my wife says that he is emotionally stunted, so we get
I
and
love it.
in all the best ways. I mean, he's just someone who's deeply introverted and could spend a week on horseback outdoors moving cattle without talking to another human being. And so
Hmm.
Ren is a pretty sophisticated sort of East Coast elite. And there's an impedance mismatch when they when they attempt
Hmm.
to find common ground. But did you want me to do a reading? I could
If you
do
would
a.
like just a short reading, that would be great.
Sure.
Just
I could
a,
do a really short one that illustrates, I think, what's interesting about Silas is that he is a little bit subversive. He on the
Mhm.
surface, he's just a fun hero, but he's actually super progressive and not in a way involving politics or labels. He just deeply believes in the dignity of all people, and that's
Mhm.
ultimately what gets him the job. And I'm just going to read a couple paragraphs from his job interview with the town manager, which was, he shows up in Western clothes, and this New England, town manager has no idea what to make of this guy, and they're on the topic of whether he might be an appropriate police chief, right, for this totally different kind of town. And Silas says, now, regarding sensitivity, I know this town's unique, has special aspects to its culture. I appreciate that. Obviously, there's a lot of groups here I'm not a member of or even all that familiar with. I understand my limitations. I know better than to wade into water I can't see through. But I got a philosophy about people, generally allows me to get along in a lot of situations. Oh, tell me about that philosophy. Way I see it, community's not so different from a herd of cattle. Some are wild, some are steady, some are lame, some got a mean streak. But you don't get to pick and choose which ones you look after. You keep them all moving in the right direction. Make sure none get trampled. Don't play favorites. My job isn't about pushing folks into pens they don't belong in. It's to keep the peace and make sure everyone's got a fair shake at the water trough. Okay, but how does that relate to policing? Not finished. Being able to do that takes a philosophy about people that lets you look at them the right way. Yes, you could say I believe in judging folks by their actions, not by who they are or who they love. On the ranch, we didn't care much about labels or what folks did on their own time. You like square dancing? Don't like square dancing? It don't matter. What mattered was how they did their job, how they treated others, whether they pulled their weight.
Mm, that's great. Great. No, I, one of the things I wanted to ask both of you about is, and one of the things I love about books based on the Cape, since I have lived here most of my life, um, and I write about it as well. Um, I feel like, Christopher and too with you, Lindsay, that the Cape is another character. in your work. And I just wondered if you could speak a little to that about what it's like to, because I don't know, you've been here what, about 5, 6 years, Lindsay?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I was one of the hordes who moved here during the pandemic. In fact, on
Uh,
March 15th, 2020, um,
uh-huh.
and from New York, and thought we were staying a couple weeks, and we ended up staying. And so part of this novel is, me
Mhm.
working through because Maddie is coming back,
Right.
and sort of readjusting after many years in the
Yeah.
city, thinking she didn't, belong in her hometown, and sort of readjusting and re-falling in love with this wonderful place. And, a big chunk of my novel takes place in the off season. And, I think so
Yeah.
many people, write about the wonderful months here. There are so many novels that take place in the summer on the Cape, and I have devoured as many of them as I can find. I love those
Hmm.
kinds of stories, but I really wanted to highlight, the specialness of this landscape, this place when it becomes quieter, when it feels like it's a whole different
Yeah.
world than in July and August. And so, that was a really important part of this story.
Hmm. And I think I remember reading, I think in your acknowledgments, giving credit to like a couple of people that really helped you, like to get to know the Cape better and
Yeah, yeah,
to,
it's funny. I mean that so Jocelyn in this book is a realtor.
oh,
And,
right. That's
we
right. Yeah.
were looking at houses during, one of the craziest
Uh,
markets of all time. And so we spent almost all of our time with our two realtors and became friends with them.
so
And
you
yeah,
got to know that world well.
yeah, and the community that I think there's a stereotype of a sort of frostiness for folks,
Hmm.
and Christopher, I'm thinking of the title of your book, The Wash Ashore. Anyone who hasn't been here for generations is a wash
Oh.
ashore. But the more that we found a community, and my daughter started going to school here, have felt a real welcome
Mm,
from a lot of people,
that's
and so
great.
there's that vibe in this novel
I'm
too.
not glad they were not just all frosty New Englanders that no, and just to, say I've lived here since I was 14 and I'm still considered a wash ashore. So because I wasn't born here. So
Right.
Yeah,
what
the
about you,
location thing,
Christopher?
it really
Yeah.
is a character in my book. It's funny, I did a book event at the JFK Museum
Hmm.
in Hyannis, and I was talking about how this book wouldn't exist if it weren't for JFK and setting aside
Hmm.
the Cape Cod National Seashore. And my
Wow.
wife's family goes back with Provincetown almost 80 years. They
Oh
were
my gosh.
saving gas rations to get down here during World War II, and the first time I came to Provincetown was in the 1970s, but I had been spending a really good chunk of time here ever since we got married 30 odd years ago. Hopefully she won't listen to this broadcast and know I didn't have that number right on the, in any event, the, the I love this place, and we moved here full time about the same time frame as Lindsay and her family. And
Hmm.
I'm a country mouse. I don't care for the suburbs and the city, and the fact that there's so much wild open space. And I'm a big photographer, gorgeous light out here, and really wanted to create a series that was a love letter to this area to highlight what's so special about it. And I think as a result, there's a lot of motifs in the book, water and light, and just a lot of the things that Silas recognizes about how winter gradually creeps in. It's like a
Hmm.
switch being flipped in the West, but out here, it sort of comes in disguised as rain, and we have the buffering effect of the water, and so for me, I don't think I could have done these books if I weren't out hiking in the dunes with the dogs at
Hmm.
sunrise every day. I mean, this place is just a part of me, and it's a critical part of the books.
I love that. No, and it comes through beautifully. It really does. You write, both of you write really beautifully about the Cape, and but
Think
before
you're a writer who lives here like all three of us. It's hard to not write about this
exactly,
place.
exactly. But I just want to reintroduce you for anybody who's just tuning in. You're listening to Arts Week on WOMR, and my two guests today are Cape-based novelists, and Lindsay J. Palmer and Christopher. Mirabile. Did I get that right this time? Oh,
You
no.
nailed it.
Oh, good.
Nailed
Okay.
it. Absolutely perfect.
When you see his name spelled, you'll understand why I'm struggling a little bit. It's not phonetically spelled. But so, I'm curious, so both of you move here and Lindsay, this is your fifth book. So you were writing novels before, obviously, before you moved to the Cape.
Yeah.
And you had another career in journalism and writing for magazines and things. And
Right.
so, how it has it been to transition, to, it's like you're writing, well, I'd say it's a similar genre,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's
I've always written, contemporary stories that are very
mm-hmm,
character driven, relationship based, and that where the setting is a character because I worked, as you said, in magazines for years. And
yeah.
my first novel, Pretty in Ink, was a satire of women's magazines. None of those magazines I worked at exist anymore because,
Isn't that
that's an
crazy? I
industry that has sort of
know.
gone by the wayside. And, I taught high school for a few years. And then for
Hmm.
years, I've been working at this company, BrainPot, that's an ed tech company. Um, I write scripts that get made into short animated movies. But I find it's a really good complement to writing fiction because, I'm
Hmm.
always learning about different things that, you never know when a nugget of information is going to find its way in fiction.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as I said before, I mean, moving here, it took me a couple years, to really, I always had come on vacation here, but to really get to know the place to feel like, okay, I can set a story
Hmm.
here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know if you feel the
Yeah.
same.
Yeah. What about you, Christopher? It's,
Well, it's funny. The adjustment for me was pretty severe in terms of
mm.
switching to fiction. I've written a lot of nonfiction books, boring kind of business related sorts of things, and
Well,
I
you
had a
have a real
career.
business background. Yeah.
Interesting.
So,
Exactly.
yeah.
And one of the things I think that has become clear to me is that writing fiction, and I know you two can appreciate this, is just such a different animal. In most of the things
Hmm.
in life you do, it's about grace under pressure and being
Mm.
articulate in the moment and kind of nailing the first take, right? You don't get up and give a conference keynote and then go, oh, wait a second, let me redo that last part. Or get up in front of a board meeting with your PowerPoint and go, I think the pacing was off on that last slide.
Let me
Let me
let
let
me
me
tweak
let
that.
me redeliver that. And
That's true.
and what it
Yeah.
it took forever after a sort of a lifetime of trying to. I was a corporate lawyer embedded in a software company, and you get put on the
Uh,
spot and you have to give advice on the scene. And it took a long time for me to appreciate that with fiction writing, the magic is in the edits. It's about
mm,
getting the first draft down as sloppy as possible. And in real life, a sloppy first draft is just mediocrity, like you blew it, right? But in
mhm.
writing, it's just a great foundation.
Yep.
And the editing is where good goes to become great. And that took a long time to soak through my thick skull
Mm.
I totally agree
after
with
a lifetime of trying to nail it on the first take as society
Hmm.
and it sort of expects you to. And so
Hmm.
I actually did a little I posted a video on this, sort of like, we all complain about, oh, the edits, it's so hard, it's so much work, it takes so much time. I think it's a gift to be able to edit until you've polished it to such a high shine that you feel great about a paragraph or a sentence and you decide you're going to ship it.
I
And
actually
so that's my
totally
perspective
agree.
on
I think some writers
Mm.
love writing on the blank page and don't like the edits, and some feel the opposite, but I'm with you. I love
That
the
would be
editing
me.
process. Oh, yeah.
Oh,
And
I
and then
don't.
we
I don't prefer the edits. I definitely prefer that
Oh,
first
okay.
draft and getting
I
it
prefer the
down. But
edit.
I appreciate the
yeah.
value of the edits, and I think that
Hmm.
the ability to edit is a gift that authors have and don't necessarily share with anyone else, right? I mean, even being a
Hmm.
sculptor, I mean, once you chip that big piece off, you can't exactly glue it back on, right? Same thing with oil painting. But writers can just refine and improve and polish until they've achieved what they perceive as perfection.
Or until it goes to print. Even reading aloud today, I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I would tweak that, but too late.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, it's that makes me think, about one of the things. I'm one of those nerds that I love to go to book events, and it's always like, I'm thinking in my head of like asking for a friend, like what is, each of your process, and do you write every day, and do you, I'm not sure what your deal is with your publisher, Lindsay, if you've got
Yeah.
deadlines that, it's like, okay, I've got to turn out a book a year, or I've got to, so I'm
Yeah.
curious.
I actually have my next novel that's due a day before Salt Sisters comes out on July 14th. So
That
that's
happens a
not been
lot to
pressure at
people.
all. Right.
And no pressure.
But yeah, I mean, as I said, I have a full-time job and I know, that's the
Yeah. And
case.
you have a young
Certainly,
child too.
right. Like,
Yeah.
right. Most writers are piecing things together.
Yeah.
And my daughter, gets on the school bus at 7:20 and my day job starts at 9 a.m. and that's my window. So it's based and it's
Wow.
kind of a nice amount of time because
Yeah.
an hour and a half, you can't
Hmm.
really mess around and it's not super intimidating. Well, it depends. It depends what part of the process, but I just sit there and I plug in and then the weekends I have a little more flexibility and time, but
Hmm.
I do try to, when I'm working on a project, try to write every day because I mean, I'm sure you all have experienced this. If you're in a document, if you're working on it, it's like some of the
Hmm.
work happens when you're sleeping and you wake up with an idea
Hmm.
and when you're walking through your day versus
Yeah.
when I used to go into an office and commute and did not have that ability to work during the week, when I would open up my document again on a Saturday morning, I would think, what was I working on? I
Yeah.
don't even
Where
know
was
where I
this?
am. So
Yeah.
I really feel lucky that I do have that practice that, mostly I stick to.
Hmm. What about you, Christopher?
Well, I'm actually writing a book, and I'm just starting the third one now. I'm writing throughout the day. I have the luxury. Our kids have flown the coop, so
Hmm.
I have the luxury of being able to get usually a couple of blocks of an hour or two, maybe a third block of an hour during the day when the dogs don't need attention. And my process is I do a little bit of outlining, not a ton. I write about an index card worth of outline per chapter. I typically start each day by listening to the previous day's output. I just use one of those synthetic voices, and they make a hash out of Silas's accent and dialect. But it's
Right.
good. It's good enough to get some notes, and so that's for me a great way. I get out early, really early with the dogs, and listen to yesterday's writing and pick up some good notes so that when I come back to the computer, I've gotten the brain in gear already. And I
Hmm.
kind of can just go back and make a couple fiddles and a couple little edits and address those notes and yesterday's output. And that's in a very, very natural way of kind of refreshing what the heck I was talking about yesterday, right?
Yeah.
And then the next chapter usually flows. And my chapters are about 1,400 words on average.
Yeah, they're a
So,
very
and my
nice length as somebody who likes to read when they go to bed at night. And it's like, and I like to read by chapters. So it's like, oh, I can easily do a couple of chapters. No, yeah.
don't let your guard down though. Every once in a while, I had an
Yes, every
editor who
once in a while
made
there's a
me.
longer one.
I hit a 3,000 word chapter, and I tried to divide them up, and my editor was like, "What are you doing?" On a good day, I can get a whole chapter nailed down. On another day, it might just be a piece of it or some
Hmm.
revisions, and it really just depends. So that's
Yeah.
my process, and then I
Yeah.
go through, the typical editing process and read and read and reread and reread and reread. Usual stuff.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, no, and that's very, very interesting. And I had a great teacher that tell me one time, write 2 pages a day, every day, and you have a first draft in about 4 months. And so that's what I do. I feel like if I've
Wow.
done my 2 pages, then I'm okay. But
I'm
but one of the
jealous of
things,
people who can stick to that.
well, again, like Christopher, my kids have flown the coop as
Right.
well, and they're all grown up, and I have I mean, 3 other jobs, but I can fit this in quite easily. But before we only have a few minutes left, believe it or not, you guys are just so wonderful to chat with. Um, we were talking before we started recording about marketing, and that's like a whole other full-time job in itself, and being on social media and doing all of that. And that also means events, and I wanted to give each of you a chance to talk about some upcoming events and also shout out on socials, like where people can find you and things like that. So, Lindsay, what do you have? You have many things because
Yeah.
your book comes out officially next month. And
Yep, July 14th. And because, it takes place on the Cape, I really wanted to get in some Cape events.
yeah,
So the
yeah.
first one is in my hometown in Eastham on Tuesday, July 21st, at Eastham
Okay.
Library. And then I have one Thursday, August 20th at the Brewster Bookstore, which I love.
That's a great store.
Yeah, and Wednesday, August 26th at Wellfleet Public Library. And then
Hmm.
in the fall, Tuesday, September 22nd, at Hitcomb's Bookshop. And I didn't mention
Okay.
my co-authors, but people joining me will be Susan Rieger, Karen Duquesne, Jacqueline Machard, and Kristen Higgins, who are all wonderful
Oh, they
Cape
are.
Cod
They're all
novelists.
terrific.
So
Definitely.
it is a bear to plan, but it's so fun and it's exciting to
Yeah.
actually get to talk to readers.
And where can people find you on social media?
So I'm on lindseyjpalmer.com, and I'm also
Okay.
active on Instagram, and my handle is at Lindsey J. Palmer. Lindsey
Okay.
with an E.
Okay. And okay, Christopher, we only have like a minute and a half or so left. Can you name a few events that are coming up
Sure.
in your handle?
Sure. I've been marketing the Washer Shore since April, but I have a few relevant places on the Cape this summer. I'll
Hmm.
be at the Truro Public Library on July 7th at
Mm.
4 in the afternoon. And I'll be doing a store event in Mashpee at the J. McLaughlin store at
Oh,
6
nice.
p.m. on July 16th. And then I'll be at Highfield Hall on August 20th at 4:30 in the afternoon. And then I'll be back at the JFK Museum for book two on September 23rd.
Wow,
And I
that's
can be
amazing.
found around the internet at authorchristophermirabile.com.
And maybe
And
you should
those
spell your last name. It's oh,
Mirab as in boy, ILE. So
right.
author ChristopherMirabile.com, and I'm on the socials as Christopher Mirabile or author Christopher
Yeah.
Mirabile.
And I have to say, I follow both of you, and you are very fun follows. So I encourage people to follow you both.
As are
And
you. Thank you.
well, thank you so much, both of you, for coming in today. And I could talk to you for a lot longer. And so we'll have to do a second one at some point. And so definitely pick up The Wash Ashore and Salt Sisters. They are great beach reads, and I can't encourage you enough. And tune in again next time for Arts Week.
Thank you, Candy.
Thank you, Candy.